What's up, card fighters, and welcome back to the Prime Vanguard channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing my training video for my Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom deck profile for Standard Vanguard. Now, before you watch this video, if you have not seen my Maelstrom deck profile, that video is now up. Definitely watch that before coming to this one, as you'll understand the ratios of the deck better and the card choices that we've chosen for this particular deck build. If you have watched that, then we can go ahead and hop right into this video. We'll be discussing Mulligan and doing some test hand examples of how to play my variation of Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom. Now, Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom is a deck that was introduced to us all the way back in set 8 of D Booster Minerva Rising, and the deck has gotten some really solid support within the past 2 sets for Stoicheia, but it has improved this deck tenfold. Now, I've really been enjoying playing this variation of the build. It is a late game sort of rush variation that lets you utilize cards to move into the soul, get extra attacks, get extra power to your rear guards, which is something this deck has been lacking. And we have also gotten the new promo support for Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom. That support is not in this deck, but it will be brought up, and there are some combo showcasing that I will show for that deck if I were to put that card into this particular build. But with that being said, we're going to head right on over to the next segment of this video, which will be discussing Mulligan of Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom and what the deck wants to do. Now, for the Mulligan segment of this video, I want to discuss that in general, Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom is a late game rush deck. This deck uses pokes to increase the number of attacks it gets while forcing your opponent to drop small amounts of guards from their hand. This way they continuously have to block your attacks because of the low power, but they still are strong enough just to barely hit. With the introduction of the new cards and the support for the deck and how the deck operates with its ride line, these are certain cards I've chosen for in general gameplay for Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom to have for Mulligan. Now, the first card I think is really important to have in your opening hand, without a doubt, is Wheel Assault. Now, Wheel Assault has the following ability of auto rearguard circle. At the end of the battle, this unit boosted. If you have a Vanguard Maelstrom in its card name, Soul Blast 1, choose up 2 of your rearguards and swap their positions. Wheel Assault is an Aqua Force unit, so in the ride line it can be called up by Algos, but it's very important to open up with one. Not only can this be a grade 1 you can call to rearguard to start rushing your opponent with, but it also is a key piece in getting you to your 5 to 6 attack multi-hit combos. This card behind a rearguard circle will exchange a column for another set of attacks. Behind the Vanguard, you can swap position between units in the front and back row, which will be important to our future combos, as well as the fact that because it isn't Stoicheia and Aqua Force card, it can be revived on multiple conditions, which means that the sooner we get this card out onto the board or in the discard pile, we'll have access to it later game and not have to worry about not seeing it so that we don't hit our combos. You definitely want to hold 1 copy of this in your opening hand because it's very important to your late game strategy. Second reason for this card to be in our hand, which is Tidal Assault. Now, Tidal Assault is another Aqua Force card that we can search out, but it's the exact same reason as Wheel Assault. This card's ability to, at the end of the battle, it attacks on the second battle to restand itself. This is how you'll be hitting the threshold and criteria for your Vanguard's 4 attack hit. Also, it'll be a key piece in combos with Wheel Assault when going for your multi-attack combos by swapping units and columns. We'll get into that later, but it's going to be a very important piece that synergizes with Wheel Assault for our 5 to 6 attack combos. Another piece that is up for debate in terms of Mulligan is your Blue Artillery Dragon Inlet Pulse Dragon. Everyone knows what this card does. It's become basically the bread and butter of all Stoicheia decks, but in this deck it's extremely important. Maelstrom utilizes a lot of soul and targets the card that it plays within the deck as a key piece to be called out from the soul to hit your multi-attack combos. This card puts itself in the soul to give you an extra draw, and because it moves itself into the soul from the board, it is a target that can remove itself clear from Gondiva's skills. It gives you extra soul to utilize for your Tidal Assault skills and the other Soul Blast skills you have in the deck, and it becomes a great target for your Maelstrom's ability in the later game. There are other pieces you can definitely choose to play with this instead. If you don't want to hold on to your Inlet Pulse Dragon, the card I would hold on instead of it would be 1 copy of Tideline Dragon. Opening up with either one of these dragons would be great, but if I had to choose one to keep, it would definitely be the Inlet Pulse Dragon in certain matchups, and then Tideline in certain matchups as well. Both of these cards don't work until turn 3, turn 4, depending on the game or whatever situation you're in. However, I just think that opening up with the Tideline Dragon is not as good because this card does not work until you are a Persona Ride, which requires you to have another card in your hand later. But this card is also a tier dragon, which means it can be called out vis-a-vis the ability of your tier 9 Algos, which we can get to later in the game vis-a-vis riding on from Maelstrom. Now, since we have access to that, this is what I think a good opening hand should be. It definitely is these 3 cards and then whatever 2 cards you get from the top of your deck. I think that opening up with these 3 is super important to your strategy because one is a combo piece, one is a starter, and then one is a late game resource card. Everything else that you open up with is not as bad, but they'll all assist you later in the game when that time comes. Now that we're done mulliganing, we're going to do our very first test hand for this deck. I'm super excited to showcase to you guys what this deck can do. I've been having a lot of fun with it in Deer Days, and I think that its transition from Deer Days to real life is going to be super solid. We're getting new support within the next set, as well as another promo to help this deck out. And while I am not playing the promo in my variation because I haven't decided on where I will put it in the deck yet, I do think the fact that it exists means that Maelstrom is on a really good start to having a competitive career in Vanguard. Now, our opening hand is terrible. There's nothing here that I would keep. It's all triggers. Your Armada is searchable later, so because it is a searchable piece that we can get from our grade 1 ride unit, we are going to just return everything and hope for better cards. So all 5 will be returned. We get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this hand is much better. We have a copy of Wheel Assault, which is one of our starting pieces, the Tideline for our later game push, a Persona Ride for later game push, and we have Tideline in hand, so that works out very well, and a copy of Judgment Maelstrom. Now, holding on to 1 isn't horrible, but because we have 3 others in the deck that are searchable, it just means that we'll be able to start building those up in our set order zone. Alright, our opening hand is ready, we've done our redraw, and we can now get into this. So drawing for turn, we draw into a draw trigger. Now, for me personally, I think that depending on your matchup, in most games, you're going to want to take a very aggressive start with this deck. So for that particular reason, I'm going to drop the Lena, because I do want to call the Tideline maybe on my grade 2 turn to start at swinging with it, depending on matchup and what I'm playing against, or if I just want to push. So we ride into Theo from Eric. Theo does nothing, and then because the opponent's turn, the opponent will discard, they'll ride, they'll draw, they'll swing at us. We will no guard here, and we'll take our damage, which is an inlet. Then we'll start our turn, we will draw. Now, a lot of the key pieces in our hand are still very important. I think that something here we can do is, depending on your matchup, you can give up the Armada now. This is a good discard target because we're going to search one out later in the game. If you don't want to rush, you can give up the Tideline. And if the match was required, you can give up the Planar Prevent Dragon. All of these are okay options. These all depend upon your matchup, but anytime you want to hold on to your normal units because you haven't made up your mind, the best thing to do sometimes is discard just triggers. So in this case, I'll discard the Abyss Temptation to go into the Algos. Theo will kick in, and I'll be able to search my deck out for 1 copy of a Blue Storm Armada card, which is our Judgment Maelstrom. If the matchup had not called for it, I would have discarded the other Judgment Maelstrom and got this Judgment Maelstrom as a substitute and held on to the defensive. That is one option you can do, but because we're playing against a slower opponent and this 1 damage interval test, we will not be doing that. We'll take this to our hand. And then for pushing. So the Wheel Assault's placement is definitely questionable because the combos you get from it being here versus it being here are different. So I'm going to hold on to Wheel Assault, but because I have this in my hand and I can always bring it back later, I'll call out the Tideline Dragon. Tideline Dragon is in place. We'll swing first. This will be 10. The opponent will take 1 point of damage. We'll go in with the Algos. They'll no guard this. We'll drive check. We got a Tidal Assault. Very nice. We're now getting all of our key pieces on the board and in play to work. The opponent is now at 2 damage. They'll take their turn, discard, ride, swing at us. We will no guard here. We'll take a point of damage. And it's a critical trigger, which is not the worst. And then we start our turn. Alright, stand. draw. We have a copy of Prize Trident. Now this is a card I actually don't want to give up because this is one of the only pieces in the deck that helps us countercharge, which will be important later. So in this case, what I will do is I'll discard one copy of the Judgment Maelstrom to bring in our Blue Storm Dragon Maelstrom. Now, Algos kicks in. We check the top 7 cards of the deck. These are our options, and we got a Wheel Assault. Okay, so I will take the Wheel Assault, and then call Wheel Assault here, and I will showcase why in just a minute. So Wheel Assault comes out to play, Maelstrom is now in play. Now there are a couple of things you can do. So Maelstrom, you can use its effect now if you want to and discard a copy of the other Wheel Assault in your hand because you have one in play and call out either Theo or Algos, depending on what your battle formations look like. Because we know that we have Wheel Assault in play, we're going to have the option of multi-attacking, which will be good for us, and then the Algos will go back into the soul at the end of the turn, which means that we'll always have a copy of it usable later. So one option we can do is we can call Tidal Assault here, Prize Trident here, we can discard a copy of Wheel Assault and call a copy of Algos here. And then this can be our opening formation. Yep, this can be our opening formation. The goal of this turn is to get as many attacks as we possibly can in to push our opponent. And their opponent, they're at 2 damage, and we're at 2 damage. So far we're in a good spot. I think this formation is nice. It's not bad at all. And then another thing you can do is, now that I'm thinking about it, is if I didn't discard this Judgment Maelstrom, I could have discarded the Wheel Assault in my hand, one would have been called out, and then you can put this into play to revive something. That is completely an option to you. But I like the option I made for it because naturally I had no way of knowing what it is that I was going to search for. So going into battle phase, we're going to go Tideline for 10, and I'll explain why I'm leaving this standing for a minute. They'll take their damage. Now, if they pull a damage trigger here, it is perfectly fine. The goal, we're still good to get some good hits in. So we'll go Tidal Assault for 1. Second battle, we'll Counterblast 1. We'll restand it here. Then we'll go Tidal Assault again. Now we are 3 attacks in. Now that that is done, we will use Tidal Assault skill. This is on attack. We'll Soul Blast 1, which will be the Eric, and we'll give 5k to our Vanguard. This way, if they are at 20,000 points, we are at least 5k above them because we are now a 26k attacker, which means we can get over their 15k guard with 1 pass. So they'll still attack and swing. This will miss. So we have 1, 2, 3. We will swing with Maelstrom. Maelstrom will attack. And then his skill will go off. We're on the 4th battle. We retire something. We draw our OT. Not the best, but it happens. And then we will go from there. First, second, no triggers. And then they'll take their damage. Now here, if they take a damage trigger, because I pull no triggers, I won't do the swap with Wheel Assault to get these 2 to swap positions. What I will do instead is I will do these. I will use the skill to Soul Blast 1, swap these 2, and then move this into the soul. This way this is protected so it can't be attacked. Even though I can bring it back and I have one in hand, that is an option you can do. Or you can take it a step further, and if you want to protect this instead, you can do this. That is an option. You can then swing with this, move this into soul, and get the counter charge of 1 and move this into soul. That is an option as well. If they don't take any damage, then the play that I just made now would be the correct one. You'll leave this standing, you won't use the skill because you need it. Then you'll swing after you Soul Blast this and attack the opponent's Vanguard, this is going to be 5k bonus because it's the 4th battle or more, and it'll be 23 to their Vanguard. So this will require a 5k block for them, because if not, you get to draw another card. Say they let this through and they're now at 4 points of damage, you can draw one from Algos, which is Persona Ride. You move this into Soul, and then you have board for next turn. So that is the natural flow of the deck. That is how you get your 4 to 5 attacks. That is the turn that it usually goes best in. This deck honestly works really well when going first or second. The flow of it is amazing. There are certain things you can do when going second that make it a little bit better, but this is not bad whatsoever. Alright, going on to our next hand, we will draw our 5 cards. We have Tideline, Elegy, Lena, Tideline, and Wheel Assault. So for me, again, depending on the matchup, the Wheel Assault is a must. Everything else technically can go, but I'll hold on to one Tideline just for push and the fact that I can get it back later, so I'll just return these 3. Draw 3, Tidal, and then 2 defensives. Okay, not the worst, not the best. And then we shuffle. Alright, we're shuffled and ready to go, so let's get started. We draw, draw. Alright, so we got Inlet. This is honestly not horrible. This is actually kind of solid now. So we'll discard the Inlet to ride into Theo. We'll pass from there. Now our opponent will take their turn. They're going first. Discard, ride, draw, swing. We'll take it. Planar Prevent, not bad. We'll go next. Draw for turn. We have another Wheel Assault. Now, depending on what your opponent is playing and how aggressively you want to play, I would discard either A, the Wheel Assault, or I would discard the Tideline. I do want to hold on to the defensives because your hand doesn't always get super big sometimes, and you don't know what they're going to do next to you. So in this case, what I'm going to do, because I already have one in hand, I'm going to discard a copy of the Wheel Assaults and go ahead and ride into Algos. Now that I'm in Algos, Theo comes into play, and then I search my deck for one Blue Storm Armada card, which is obviously the Judgment Maelstrom. That'll come in my hand instead. Then I give my deck a shuffle. Alright, so now going into your next line of attack. The next thing I would do is I will call Tidal, I will call Tideline, and I will call Wheel. Alright, and then we'll go ahead and swing. Tideline is first. Tideline is first. It doesn't matter. Tidal is next. And there's a reason why I'm attacking like this. And then Algos is next. For 18. Alright, drive check, draw trigger, power goes in, and we draw. Now, our opponent is at 2 to 3 damage, and I'll explain why I attacked like that. The reason why I attacked like that is because, say they guard this is with a 5, and then they guard this with like a 5 or something, and then they take this, they're at least at 1 point of damage, or we could consider 1 point of damage. When you go into your Maelstrom turn, it's really nice to open up with at least 1 to 2 points of damage, and the reason being is because you may have a skill that you might want to use a CB for, but you definitely will be using 1 CB to activate your Tidal Assault skill all the time. Every single time it always happens, you're going to want that 1 CB, so it's very important to always open one of these. Now, if I had swung like this, and this, and I hit a heal, I would have lost this. They could have swung at my rear guards, and my combo for next turn would have been super weak. So I definitely want to hold on to this 1 point of damage until next turn to do something. If not, you can choose not to take the damage and stay at 1. Me personally, I like to open up to 2 so I can hold on to some of the cards in my hand and I have better place to do in the future turns. So the opponent will take their turn. We take a point of damage. It's a draw trigger. Nice. We draw again, and then we stand and draw. So that's just something to keep important. We now have our 2 points of damage, which essentially means that we can do anything we want. We'll have access to full combo in any situation. And for my hand, I'm going to play a little greedy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to discard Lena, and the reason being is because I'm going to go into Maelstrom. I'll use the skill of Algos when ridden. We check top 7, and we got Inlet. So what I'll do is I'll Superior Call Inlet here. All right, so Inlet will come in, and we'll put it right here. Okay, so if you want to have a little fun and be a little greedy, what you can do is you can call out your other, you can play this and call out a Wheel Assault. This is the regular thing to do to make sure your attacks hit. Or you can play Judgment Maelstrom and call out another Inlet. Now me, depending on what I'm playing against, some decks I might need more time for setup, and then some decks I might need more time for push. Assuming this is a deck I need more time for setup and to hit other pieces so I can do other things later in the game, I'm going to play Judgment Maelstrom. I'm going to Superior Call Inlet Dragon, because when going first, his first ability does not work. It only works if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3, so I will just hold on to my resources for now. And then I will go ahead and start attacking my opponent. 10, 10. We'll use the skill, Soul Blast 1, give 5k to Vanguard. And then obviously this depends on if they hit damage or not. Assuming they haven't hit any damage yet, we'll Counterblast 1. We'll restand. We'll go 10 again. Then we will now swing in with this. This is 26 to Vanguard. We draw. We got another Judgment Maelstrom. Twin Drive. First, critical trigger. Depending on obviously what they guard with affects this, but we'll give, say, critical here, power here. Second, critical trigger, critical here, power here, everything here. Then we'll use Wheel Assault. We'll Soul Blast 1, which will be the Theo this time, because it's not a bad choice. And we will swap out Title and Inlet, because we want our Judgment Maelstrom to go another card we might need for next turn. Then Inlet will swing for 33. Let's say they survive. End of turn, these two go into Soul, and then we draw 2. Draw Persona Ride and OT. So that is an option you definitely can go if you want to play a little bit greedy. If you want to be greedier, you could have discarded a card from your hand and called out Algos instead and swapped, and then called over the Inlet over this, and you could have potentially drew 3 to 4 new cards. Because if Algos' attack was successful against your opponent, then he could have hit, and Algos gets 5k power. So assuming your opponent didn't hit any damage triggers on those turns and they were trying to conserve cards in their hand, you would have eaten up a lot of their hand or give them a lot of damage, but either way, you walked out with over a 6 to 7 card hand plus, which is not bad whatsoever, and gave yourself 2 extra cards in Soul.